Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to In the Zone. Pete Coles, Rich Sutter. First day of basketball practice for us here in Division Three land. So it's an exciting day, beautiful day outside. So it's going to be really nice. 4 to 6 today. We'll see if we still got it in the tank, Pete. We'll see if we still got it in the tank. I did want to jump off just quickly and mention that so many people were excited about Pete's Corner last week.
Oh,
so
boy.
many people. I got this came from a lot of people that I know and people that are in the know. You know, a couple of Jandolis, from St. Bonaventure, journalism guys who know this business better than I do, certainly. And they said your questions were unbelievable, and they thought the segment of the section, putting that in the show was pretty good too. So we're going to keep rolling with that. And Pete, I hope you're ready because we're ready to go to Pete's Corner right now.
All right, the first question is now the NBA practices are out there. There's rumors and there's some confirmation of a quickly growing rivalry between LeBron and Bronny. What do you think about that two family members playing on the same team?
Wow. Okay, let's undress that a minute. I would say that I think that there's going to be a lot of complexities there because this hasn't happened much before. And these complexities will now occur under a media microscope that nobody has ever been under before. The new age of media is there's very, very little place to go and hide anymore if you're a celebrity, if you're a person of that status. So I think there'll be tremendous scrutiny. I think there'll be some scrutiny that could cause some interpersonal strain between the two of them. And I think that will be something to watch as it unfolds. My guess, my knowledge, is that I think Bronny's going to spend a good amount of time in the G League this year. He's going to be a two-way player. And there'll be some time when he does go to the G League. So if there is some times where things get exasperated, there is that option, where things get a little heated or things get a little bit too intricate, where people are just focusing on that rather than focusing on the Lakers as a whole. Then I could see maybe the Lakers make a move and have them spend some time in the G League at moments like that. That can be an option. But great question. I really wouldn't want to have any part of that as a dad. If I was a dad, I wouldn't want to coach my own son. I wouldn't want to have my own son under my direction in any way, and nor would I want to share the floor with him under a situation there that's as stressful and absolutely difficult as it is. Think about Bronny for a second. All right, that's what I want to focus on just in this question. All right, think about Bronny.
Yep.
And the beautiful thing about Pete's Corner is I don't get the questions. These are just given to me. And so I'm taking this and I'm going to take it this way. Think about Bronny and what happens if he struggles? And under that huge microscope, so much pressure on him mentally. We talk about mental health all the time these days, but we're not necessarily creating environments that are conducive to good mental health. And the whole game of basketball, football, baseball, whatever you're in, professionally, it's a cauldron. It's an absolute pressure-filled cauldron. And what good organizations and good coaches are able to do is, as a coach, what I think my job is I control the burner. And I don't want to see that pot boil as a coach. We talked about being positive last week. I don't want to turn the heat up in that pot either. I don't want to be part of that. And so as LeBron, as much as he's had to do with the organizations that he's been with, for crying out loud, he coaches the team and he's the general manager too. Let's admit it.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay? Let's just admit it. Okay? So with all of that going into play, there's just a lot here. And I just really focus on the young man who I think has the greatest amount of vulnerabilities in this situation. But great question. We'll follow it. It will unfold.
It's going to be a big storyline this year.
I think it is too, and I'm afraid of that a little bit for the young man's sake. But what we're here to say is that this is our 75th show.
Yeah.
And we'll cover it.
Yeah.
We'll get to 100. We'll be letting you know.
Yeah, we'll be deep into it by then.
We'll be knee deep.
Yep.
We'll be knee deep. All right, hit me again, Pete.
Question number 2. The Sacramento State is going to be joining the Pac-12, or they really want to join the Pac-12. They have announced a partnership with the Sacramento Kings to use the King Stadium to play their conference games. Do you feel this continuing intertwining between NCAA and NBA is a good thing?
I don't think that's a bad thing per se, but Sacramento State is so far away from that competitively that I think that that's just kind of a wish. What I am surprised at is that some of these conferences now, with Gonzaga leaving the WCC to go to the Pac-12, I think that they're only taking them in basketball only. Gonzaga doesn't have a football team.
Right.
So they're accepting them as a full member without a participating revenue football team. And I think that's I might have been on the table for UConn too, where they would accept UConn just to split from their football program and come in as a basketball and the rest of their sports members only. Because anybody right now who isn't on par with those programs right now on a football sense, you're looking at 63-0 for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Every time you play one of those teams in league.
Yep.
You're looking at completely diminishing your profile into catfish status, where you're just at the bottom of the conference, just sucking up all those dollars, because that's where the dollars will fall. You'll get as many dollars being in last place as you get in second place. So why not? But some of these conferences now are going to have to be a little more selective, because as we run through some of our differentials as well, you're going to see that the stronger are getting stronger. And they're not going to let some of these teams into their conferences just to start cherry picking in their conferences and gain the revenue that's associated with that. There's a level right now in the Big 12 and the SEC, football-wise, that's just not attainable for many, many other people within a 10-year period.
Sure.
Because Georgia and Auburn aren't going to stop recruiting in football. They're not going to stop NILing in football. They're going to keep growing and growing and growing while you're trying to grow too, no doubt. But your ability to grow in football, if you've got exponential amount of dollars, you just have unlimited amount of dollars, you can do it. If you're a state entity, it's going to be difficult to come out and forge partnerships where you can get those unlimited dollars. And you're going to start to see them seeking those type of partnerships. And I think that's what you're talking about here in question 2.
That's what it looks like. Yeah, to me, I was reading the article about it. I was like, it just seems strange that it's starting to partner more. You know, these schools don't have enough money to build the stadiums that are required for these big conferences. But then pro teams are saying, well, I might have another revenue source to give people that might not go to an NBA game, or vice versa. I can sell ticket packages for both.
St. John's has played in Madison Square Garden for years, since
Okay.
I was a kid. So I don't see any problem with colleges partnering up with those great arenas, especially NBA arenas that are in their area, and saying, okay, we can handle, because that's what the conference wants to know.
Yeah. Seats.
How many seats?
Yep.
That's
Right,
what they're
yeah,
really
yeah.
asking you.
Yep.
What kind of capacity do you have? And that's what they want to know. And so if they can pass their capacity off to somebody else, it's great. But here's the stuff about the NIL that I kind of think was unexpected. Now they move those dollars onto campus. And you have 120 scholarship football players who are all looking to get paid. If you're going to pay every single one of them X amount of dollars, you now have just blown through any amount of money that your TV stuff is bringing to you. You're just blowing through everything. And the big move, as we said, for Rutgers was to go to the Power Conference, to leave the Big East, leave the Eastern Conferences, and go out into the Big Ten. They lost $50 million last year. So I don't understand the rationale in it either.
Yeah, I don't get that one either. All right, third question.
Boom.
I'm going to devote these to the coaching end of the deal.
Cool.
In season, how important is practice, and how much time percentage-wise do you devote to it?
Great question. Binary. 2 different type of coaches out there.
Okay.
Binary is tapering and non-tapering. Let me explain that.
Okay.
Tapering means I'll give you the background to it. I believe it was Rick Barnes, and he was at Texas. I might have the coach wrong, but the story is accurate, so let's leave Barnes out of it. Let's leave Texas out of it. There's a coach at a big-time school, and every day he notices that there's a guy who comes into his practice and sits up in the stands. And at the time, this coach was non-tapering. Non-tapering means we practice the same way every single day, live, and practice is rough, rigorous. We go at it in practice. That's the other side of it, okay? So this guy's fully into that. We're going to go hard every day. In between games, we're going hard. We've got 3 games in 1 week. I don't care. We're going to grind it out. We're going to go hard in practice. And then he notices this gentleman up in his stands, and he goes over and he approaches him and he says, "What do you think of my practices? I see you here every day. I really would like to," and that's a good tribute to the to the coach.
Yeah.
To say to a guy who doesn't know, "What do you think of what you've seen every single day?" And the guy responds to him, "You wouldn't want me to tell you." And the coach took it back a little bit. I'm a big-time coach here. I get paid a lot of money. This is what we do. And he explains it to him. He says, "I'm into the swimming."
Okay.
End of things. And he said, if we trained our swimmers like you train your basketball players, they'd never win a race.
Ooh.
They'd be exhausted on race day.
Okay.
So he started to work with this guy who was into swimming and biokinetics and all this different stuff.
Yep.
And they started working on tapering, which means beginning of the season, October 15th, right up until you play your first game, you're non-tapering. You're lighting it up in practice. I hope this is what coaches are doing, because this is what we're doing. We're lighting it up in practice. We're going hard. We're getting everything we have to do to get ready for that first game. It's got to be all incorporative, and it's got to be ready to go. Okay? But we're going full bones. Everything's up and down the floor. Everything's live. Everything's competitive. Everything's going at a rate that we want it to go at. If you ever see Danny Hurley in practice, and then I went and saw him live, I thought I was looking in the mirror. Because there's
That's
not
great,
that
though.
much difference.
Yeah, sure.
Not that much difference between me and him in practice.
Yep.
You're in the middle of the floor, you're boom, and you're running it. Now, first game comes. Our first game is a tournament. So it's a home tournament in honor of Rick Martin, a young man who died in our program many, many years ago. We've held this tournament in his honor. But it's always back-to-back. It's Friday night, and then you come back Saturday less than 24 hours later and play your second game. So Sunday, obviously, is usually our day off, but then you go into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You have a game on Wednesday. You can't be in grind mode. You can't be in non-tapering mode. You got to taper down a little bit. You got to let your good players rest. You got to get them into ice baths. You have to bring your training staff in to stretch them and do some stuff that's going to be holistic, homeopathic, stuff that's going to really help them health-wise. Because playing 40 minutes in a game, my players usually play 30 minutes a game. We don't have a big rotation. We're going to play a certain amount of guys who make the starting lineup and beyond 30 minutes a game, and that's rigorous. And to do it 3 times in 1 week is rigorous.
Yeah.
So those are your 2 formulas there. Some coaches are still in the non-tapering. Hard every day, go every day, and bang it out every day. And I was that way for a long time too, until I heard this story.
Well, that's how my football practices were in high school. I mean, in summertime, you went double sessions.
Right.
And during game weeks, the only day you really wouldn't practice heavy duty was the day before the game. You'd practice just shoulder pads only. You wouldn't get fully geared up.
Pads every day.
Yeah.
That's what they call it, right?
Absolutely,
Pads
yeah.
every day,
Yep.
right? I coached football when I first came out. And some of the stories that I heard in football from some of the guys that I worked with were absolutely abhorrent, about how they were treated as athletes in the coaching situations. And it's just, I wanted to be the opposite of that guy, really. Maybe you lose a game or 2 every once in a while because you're not a psychopath and a sociopath, but it's really, you have to be in your own personal way, because for me to be like that, I have to fake it. I'm just not that way.
Yep.
Pete, 3 amazing questions, unbelievable. We're going to jump into NBA Feed 'em Fish, and we're going to jump off on a sad note. All right? We're going to give it to the people one more time. The finger
Not
wag.
in my house.
Dikembe Mutombo, not in my house. Passed on at 58 years of age. way too young, way too early. I loved him as a player. I loved him as a person. The work that he did, the humanitarian efforts he did in his home Republic of Congo will last a lifetime and endure, and that will be the mark of the great man that he was. But also, you don't get around the basket when Dikembe Mutombo is under there. And he took a line of Georgetown centers. Listen to this triumvirate, Pete. They had Patrick Ewing, Alonzo Mourning, and Dikembe Mutombo. Three centers that played at Georgetown in a very, very short period of time amongst each other.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's pretty good living. The big rejection, as I will term him, he was one of the greatest shot blockers of all time and intimidating. That piece of it right now, where you had Shaquille O'Neal was intimidating, those big, big centers that just would tell you, don't come around here. That was what the finger wag meant. Don't bring it, you know? And, it was just unbelievable. Just an unbelievable career for him, an unbelievable gentleman, and on the zone, in the zone, terribly saddened, to hear about his passing, All right, so we went through some Rookie of the Year last week, and we went through some MVPs that we gave you last week. I went back through the two lists just to see something, and in the time frame of the both lists that were accumulated, here's the guys who did both. Here's the guys who were Rookie of the Year and MVP that I could take off this list. Now, there are others who were on the list as MVPs that went back before their Rookie of the Year occurred before the list cut off. I'll give you an example, Michael Jordan. He was an MVP many times. He was also Rookie of the Year. All right, Kevin Durant, Derrick Rose, LeBron, Allen Iverson, LeBron again, David Robinson, Shaquille O'Neal. I don't know why I did LeBron again, but must have wrote him twice. All right.
Just that kind of a guy.
We've got a trade grade for you, Pete. We've got a trade to report. It's a big one, and it involves our hometown New York Knicks. Julius Randle, and we call him Julius Randle because for much of his NBA career, the D has been silent. And we have a big trade with the Knicks. And we were actually on this show. You can go back. I'll tell you, it's somewhere in the 30s, maybe the 40s of our shows. Go back into our archives. We told the Knicks, trade Julius Randle. And the reason we said that is because we had clips of him on our show standing around on defense, absolutely non-participant. Now, again, defense is a spectrum, all right? And on the spectrum, you'll have really, really good defenders. You'll have some guys who might not have the physical capabilities to be good defenders, but they're mad dog about it. They get in there and they fight and they scrap and they're very personable about getting scored on. Come to the middle of that little streak right there, and you find guys down the bottom of that, they don't mind getting scored on that much. They just want to run because when the other team scores, it means they get the ball back. So they just want to run down the other side and shoot, and that's all they care about. So by them being a conscientious objector on the defensive end, it actually, in their mind, helps their offensive capabilities because they're getting to shoot the ball quicker.
Sure, yeah.
Exactly. And then you have way, 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 way down on the spectrum are people that feel that defense is not in their profile, that somehow they're so wonderful on the offensive end of the floor that they don't have to play defense. Michael Jordan was on an all-defensive team many, many, many times. Any coach who's worth his salt will tell you that defense matters. And some coaches, again, there's coaches on that same spectrum that it matters to much more. If you went to football, you had Buddy Ryan and the Chicago Bears, defense, defense, defense. That's what they were selling. So we have this trade. We're going to give it to you, and we're going to grade it out too, because I didn't like it. I'm glad that Randle got traded because I think it's better for the Knicks that way. That's my hometown guys. Personally, I'm glad he got traded. But if I look at this from an objective standpoint, as a basketball guy, I sit here and say, they traded for Karl Anthony Towns, Pete, the big cat, that we nicknamed last week Turpentine, because he don't mix too well with the paint. And what the Knicks need is that other binary equation of that center, of the dominant center who can Dikembe Mutombo for them. They have enough offensive pieces right now. They have plenty of offense. They need somebody who can guard the basket and rebound. And they don't have that right now. I don't get the trade. Let me give it to you. Randle for Big Cat And then they put in, this is a real part of it I didn't like, Dante DiVincenzo, maybe my favorite Knick right now of all time. They put him in. He's a glue guy. They're gonna regret this by including him in the trade. There's also draft picks in the trade. And this part of it, I think the Knicks included a number one pick that was given to them by the Detroit Pistons. And if the Detroit Pistons finish anywhere near where they have, that's a lottery pick. So if you're telling me that you included Julius Randle, a lottery pick, and Dante DiVincenzo for Big Cat, I'm giving this grade an F.
Yeah, why'd you clean out your team like that?
I don't know. And they broke up their Villanova. The whole thing was this Villanova run. They had the Villanova thing going. Maybe they had too much Villanova. I don't know. James Nagy was another forward thrown into the Knicks formula. Another big guy. I don't like it, Pete. I don't like it. I think the Knicks needed help up front. Karl Anthony Towns shoots more threes than any big guy in the NBA right now. Doesn't play a lick of defense on the inside. Doesn't do a ton of other things other than shoot threes. I just don't get it. Maybe it's a spacing thing. I don't know. Or maybe they just felt they had to move Randle. I really don't know. All right? But we're going to go into NCAA fish here, and we're going to slide into, with you, we're going to talk about a couple of things that are happening right now on the recruiting front. All right, we're going to bring you the UConn Huskies got off last week on the recruiting front, and it was a big one. They signed Darius Adams, who's a 5-star guard, and he is out of La Lumiere in Indianapolis, but he's originally from Manasquan, New Jersey. He's 6'5". He's a guard, got good size, good athleticism, a great get for Danny Hurley. Now, because of their success, and this is what's going to have to be followed here, Pete, now because of their success, they're starting to have better recruiting.
Oh, sure.
But the recruitment that they did, the 2 championships were not with 5-star players. They were not with 5-star recruits. They were not with the elite of the elite. They weren't with the top 10, the guys that Duke's getting, the guys that Carolina's getting. They weren't getting those guys. They were making it happen with other guys who are great players too, but also fit their system, fit their culture, fit into everything they're doing. Now they're lighting it up with 5-star recruits. They're doing a really, really good job. But we'll see if that has any bearing on the culture. We'll see if that has any bearing on their culture. I don't know. We'll see. He's ranked number 19, on the ESPN 225 list. So that's pretty good. Yeah. That's pretty good. All right, but they beat Alabama, Kansas, and Michigan, which is significant. Everybody wanted them. Now, they're also on a 7-foot young man, Eric Rain from Potomac, Maryland. And if they get both of those, Eric Rain's 23rd. He's a legitimate 7-foot, and he's really, really a skilled player. I think that would be something else. And they're really doing some good stuff over there at UConn with their recruiting. Coach Murray, Coach Young, and Coach Moore doing a great job over there. We got a Boozer update for you. Okay, the Boozer twins. There's 2 of them. Their dad played at Duke. He was a great player too. So now you got the twins, they're out, and you have Cameron as the number 2 player, ESPN 2025, and you got Caden, who's number 17. They both have almost identical lists as to where they're going to school. There's one school that one of them has that the other one doesn't have, and I believe it's Michigan. But right now, I would say you're looking at Duke, Miami, North Carolina, Kentucky, and Arkansas.
What are the chances of a coach landing them both?
I think very strong.
Really?
I think very strong. Yeah, because they have, that's the point I was making. They have, every school is the same, except for one. One of them has Michigan. I think it's Caden Boozer. That would be the only way that they would separate. So, but, obviously, they could separate by ways of they pick on that list that they have, and they don't attend the same school. I would think they both are going to go to Duke or Miami, but when you got North Carolina, Kentucky, and Arkansas floating around in there, you got some big company. You got some big company. All right. I wanted to just cover this for a second because in the recruiting front, this is huge. This is huge. Harvard got a commitment from a young man named L.Z. Harrington. He is number 33 on the ESPN top 100 list. Now, I would say that's probably the best number signing that Harvard has ever had in the history of their career and quite possibly in the entire Ivy League. We'd have to get back with that. But they're also in the mix with the same guy that UConn is, Eric Reeb, down in Potomac, Maryland. So if Harvard could pull off those 2, That would be something. So I just wanted to alert people to that. I guess Ivy League money might just as be good as everybody else's money. If you can go to Harvard and get paid millions, why not? If they have NIL, why not?
And
I'm assuming
they got a bigger endowment. They could sweeten the pot on their own.
if they start cooking in, I'm telling you, you're right, Pete. They're the people that everybody out there should be worried about the most. Because if they ever start kicking it in, and they would just do it in certain sports, they could start just absolutely flooding the market.
Absolutely.
And with the academic profile that they have to offer, students are going to choose that more than you think. AJ DeBonsa, #1 recruit, Brockton, Massachusetts. Beautiful. We love it. Local. There's been such a shift in basketball up here lately. Cooper Flagg from Maine. AJ DeBonsa from Brockton, Mass. What a shift. Right now, he's at Utah Prep, Pete. He went from, I don't know how he got from Brockton out to Utah, but he's out there. All right, and that's probably one of the reasons BYU is involved in this as much as they are. They're one of the schools
Local
that they
guy.
say,
Yeah, they consider him a local right now.
well, there might have had a lot to do with also putting
Get him there,
in
yeah.
the prep. That has a lot to do with it generally too. But here's his schools: Alabama, Auburn. Watch out for Baylor. Baylor's doing good stuff. BYU, Kansas, Kansas State, and North Carolina. That'll be interesting. I think he's going to make a decision fairly soon. Notre Dame Fighting Irish signed Jalen Harrelson. Jalen Harrelson is the number 10 ranked on ESPN. Notre Dame, when we give you some differentials, you're going to see Notre Dame's going to be back. And they're going to be back rather quickly because they're going after program integrity. They return a really good portion of their stuff, and now signing the number 10 player in the country for Notre Dame is something else. Something else. They have two very other good players that they've signed already. They've signed Ryder Frost, who also is from South Hamilton, Mass. Ryder Frost, number 97 on ESPN. And they have Brady Kohler from Indiana, number 98. I'm assuming Mr. Kohler has been dreaming of going to Notre Dame his entire life. Pete, we're going to go into the last 25 national champions here.
All right.
We've got Connecticut, 24 and 23. We've got Kansas, 22. Good team that was also. Baylor in 21, and watch out for Baylor this year. I'm telling you, folks, that's my sleeper. And then you got Virginia in 19, Villanova in 18, North Carolina in 17. That Virginia one was probably right back after they lost to UMBC in that #1 16, the first time that ever happened. You got Villanova in 16, Duke in 15. And then the reason I wanted to put this up there is because now you're going to absolutely see, with me calling out the Huskies 1-2 in this when they just won back-to-back, you're going to see the domination of UConn's basketball here in the last number of years.
Yeah.
Because it's really staggering.
Yep.
In 14, Connecticut. 13, Louisville. In 12, Kentucky. 2011, Connecticut again. 2010 was Duke, North Carolina, and Kansas in 9 and 8. Now go Billy Donovan back-to-back Florida, 07-06, North Carolina in 05, another great team. Back to Connecticut in 04. This is unbelievable. Here's Syracuse in 03. Syracuse, all of this time, all of the great players, all of what they had to work with, one championship. Connecticut in this time has 6. Now you have Maryland before that, Duke right before that, Michigan State, and Connecticut again in 99. UConn has 6. North Carolina has 3. Duke has 2. Villanova has 2. And Kansas also has 2. Those schools have 15 of the 25, of the last 25. Amazing, amazing domination by the UConn Huskies. Little tiny place up in Stores, and boy, they know how to play basketball, though. All right, that's through 3 coaches, too.
Yeah, sure.
That's through 3 coaches. Yeah. All right. Big Ten, RSF differentials, Illinois. Got problems in Illinois, folks. This is why people are excited about Illinois this year. When I looked at the data, I'm surprised that they're excited about it because they just have they have a tremendous loss up front with one of their better returning players who they lost to Kansas State, but also they're departing 85.6. They're returning 8.6. Net differential -77. It's going to be a long winter in Champaign. Indiana. This is why we're excited about Indiana, Pete. They got maybe one of the best lineups in the country, maybe one of the best lineups in the Big Ten. I really am excited about the Hoosiers this year, and I'll tell you why. They depart 37.2. They bring back 43.2 for a plus net 6.0. Now, everybody sits there and says, Rich, Pete, 6.0, that's nothing. Well, you haven't heard the other scores then.
You just heard one at minus 60 or something like that.
Well, we just started off with Illinois minus 77.
Right, yeah.
So this is bell curve, people. This is the new day of NIL and portal, and this is the portal bell curve. Iowa, 41.8. They return 43.8, net 2.7. Program integrity.
That's doing well.
Program integrity.
Yep.
Maryland, this is why we're excited about them. They returned 41.3. They returned 31. They're minus 10. But as everybody else can see, they're minus 70s, minus 60s up here.
Yeah, that's not terrible. Minus 10 is not terrible nowadays.
And they also brought in Derek Queen, who I'm really excited about, one of the best players in the country. I know we didn't talk about the influx of new players into the roster, but, I mean, they have Julian Reese back. They also have Derek Queen. Their front line is going to be really good and solid. I think that's going to challenge people in the Big Ten. Michigan, depart. Again, this is an asterisk job because you have an asterisk because of a new coach. A lot of times, new coach, these numbers are going to be really high. We'll see how they float out next year. You saw it, like we said, with Notre Dame the year before. So they're 65.3, 19 return. They're negative 46.3. Michigan State, they depart 44.1, but they return 31.8. They're net 12.3, but I think Izzo can get it done. They're just in a really tough conference this year. Big Ten's going to be a little tougher than it has been. Minnesota, they depart 49.3. They return 34.2, net 15.1. Let me just stop here for a second because Minnesota is kind of a good example about this, okay? When we say return, all right, does that mean when you say return 40 points, does that mean you have 8 guys returning who average 5 points apiece, which is possible? Or do you have 3 guys returning who averaged 13, 12, and 12? That's a big difference.
Right.
And right here, I think Minnesota's got their kind of return. That 34 is kind of in the core of what they needed to have. So if they could build around that, I think they're okay. That's kind of where I wanted to differentiate in the differentials because there's all sorts of stuff moving around here, all sorts of plate tectonic shifting. And so what I say is we gotta really look deep into some of this. And so if you have your number 1, 2, and 3 best player coming back, and that accounts for 30 points, but you have a net differential that's negative, you could still be pretty good, I think, because you do have that core. And as a coach, I know it's really important to have that base, that core that you look at in practice, and everybody doesn't know what you're talking about, but those guys do. The new players are all lost, and you're looking for leadership, and even the coach is looking for some leadership, and he looks to the guys that are his core. All right, so Nebraska. This is why this is going to be an exciting year in Nebraska, I think, because they do have some nice pieces. They departed 44.4, but they returned 40 points.
Wow.
They're net 3.7. I think they're going to be okay. Northwestern, for many years, I catfished them. Many years I said they were a catfish. They just sit at the bottom of the Big Ten, soaking up the cash, and they don't have to win. They don't have to be any good. They've never been any good in basketball. And right now, Coach Collins is in a really difficult situation, a really difficult job in that league because it's very academically driven at Northwestern. They probably belong in the Ivy League, but the football, that would never do it for the football. But it's a tough job. Depart 33.8, but it's an easy place right now to practice program integrity. 47.2 returns, your net plus 13.4. Anything that's a plus right now, people, is good.
Yeah.
Because it's a comparative. We have to compare it to what everybody else is doing, and a lot of other people are completely underwater. If you're a new coach and you're completely underwater, I get it. You cleaned them out, you're bringing in your own guys, and you're going to make that year shift, and you're going to do it quickly, and you're going to do it fast. I get it. But then if you've been around a long time and you got all of these differentials and boom, you've been there for 15 years and you got a negative 70, you're going to be in trouble. All right, Purdue, without the big Z. I really want that kid to come on our show, Pete. And I've reached out and I want to try and find a way to reach out to him because we're the only one who picked him to be number one. There was no other media outlet in the entire world who picked him to be number one, and now he's slated or predicted to be possible Rookie of the Year. And I think we were right about that. I'd love to have him come on our show. I really would. He's a great young man by everything I can tell. But now 44.0 is out the door. Most of that was loaded in him, though. This is the other part of that, digging into the differential. Do you have three players returning who are really good? They do. They've got 41.2 returning. It's a net minus 2.8, but they got a lot of good talent back, but they did lose that one big piece. It's a lot easier to replace one big piece than it is to replace three significant pieces. And that's where they're going to have to focus. They brought in another young man who's plus 7 foot, and we'll see how well he does. But when I first saw him, I thought it might be a year of strength training that would help there. Rutgers departs 62.2, return 19.9. I know people are excited out in Jersey about this Rutgers team because of Ace Bailey, because of Dylan Harper, and I get it. You got the number 2 and 3 player in the country. But they're gone after this year. And right now, your team isn't stocked. And you lost Cliff Amorie over to Alabama, which would have made you solid up front with those 2 real good freshmen running around. Watch that team. Watch that team this year, Pete, because I don't know. UCLA, they depart 25.2. This is bad news for people in the Big Ten. Cronin's teams haven't been great the last couple of years. They haven't had, they were in a national title game a couple of years before that, but their net now is 19.7. They're returning 44.9, and they're entering the Big Ten for the first time ever. So we'll see if the travel kills them. We'll see if all the back and forth gets to them. But right now, I think UCLA could challenge for the Big Ten their first year there. USC, and again, I wanted to just stop here for a second and just jump all over these people because these teams don't belong in the Big Ten. All right? And those teams that are in the Big East, I love Coach McDermott, but Creighton's in Nebraska, for crying out loud. That's nowhere near the East. And so somebody has to step in and realign these conferences so that they become more geographic. Because what you took out were the rivalries. What you took out was one of the most exciting parts of what happens here. UConn and Syracuse, they don't have to play anymore. They're in 2 different conferences. That was a great rivalry. And so this is what they took out, and I don't get it. But I just wanted to stop there for a second and say, as I go through this, as I read through this and look through it, it seems more ridiculous to me than it at first did. USC, 80.3 depart. New coach, asterisk. They brought in Musselman. Andy Enfield went to SMU, so he can go from Texas to the ACC, which is the Atlantic Coast Conference. Return 3.3. Net minus 77.0. It's going to be a long year out in the Big Ten for USC. I think UCLA has a pretty good chance. But, Musselman's been at this for a while, and he's a veteran. He'll build it. But, I guess that they check the NIL stuff before they go in. But I would wonder if some of this NIL stuff is kind of like it is with the players. Like there was a story about this young man, and he was supposed to get a $13 million football contract from one of the big schools, and they just reneged, and they just didn't give it to him. So I think there's a lot of this stuff that's just, it's out there, All right, let's finish here. Washington, 75.9. They returned 13.6, minus 62.3. They brought in Great Osabor. He's a good player. They're going to have to rebuild a little bit, but I think their time in the Big Ten might be a little bit rough. Wisconsin, program integrity, 40.4 out the door, 36.6 returns, though, minus 3.8. I think if you're a major program, that's where you want to try and keep your numbers. What you lose, what you got. I lost 40, but I got 40. I lost 38, but I got 36.
Sure, yeah.
That's where I think you want, and that's why I've been doing this, is just to kind of see, even from my own rationale as a coach, when we're recruiting and doing things, okay, think a little bit more long-term as to what it looks like when it all graduates, what it looks like when you're all seniors. and then you got to rebuild it quickly. You need to have that discussion with your coaching staff long before that occurs.
Yep.
All right, Big 12, welcome Arizona State. I think it's going to be rough. 63.8 on the depart. They returned 21.5. They didn't do good in their conference when they were on the West Coast. I think they're moving into a much, much more difficult conference right now, and I think they're going to see a huge disparity in the physicality of play between the conference they were in and the Big 12. Big 12's got some athletes in it. Big 12's got some big bodies in it, and they're just going at it. So I think Arizona State's going to really struggle this year. Baylor, they depart 51.2. They return 26.4. They're net minus 24.8. They have some great transfers and stuff, but still, you're a pretty good minus. BYU, program integrity, 43.7 gone, 48.7 returns with a plus 5.0. Their coach left to go to Kentucky. They have a new coaching staff in there, Kevin Young. We'll see how they do. Cincinnati, this guy, I don't know if you move out of Cincinnati because it's a big job, but Wes Miller got it going at Cincinnati. They're in the Big 12. They've survived. Any big program that really needs to look at a coach and they want a proven, experienced coach that may want to take one more step up the ladder, I'd say Wes Miller might be your guy. He departs 26.7, but returns, and this is one of the best return numbers I've seen all year, 58.6.
Wow.
Net 32.4.
Wow.
That's good numbers.
Yeah.
Colorado, nobody is going to get beat down more than Colorado. KJ Simpson, Tristan Da Silva, and Cody Williams, all gone. Those are three great players, 2 first-round draft picks, okay? They depart 76.5. They return 16.2. Their net 60.3 on the negative side. This is why I say if there's somebody that might get UConn, you're going to have to out-tough UConn. You're going to have to out-grit UConn. You're going to have to be doing stuff that they're doing and be just as capable and wind up with a team that's better than theirs in that moment. If anybody can do it right in this moment, it's the Houston Cougars, Kelvin Sampson. The standard they've set for the last years has been remarkable. And right now, they return on a departure 20.2. And on the return, 59.5 for a net 39.3. They're practicing program integrity at the highest level. It shows, it works, and Sampson right now is my guy because I love the way this guy coaches basketball. Iowa State. This is really a miracle of a program, as we've said on the show before, what they've been able to do down in that part of the country with the talent base around them and all the other stuff. Think about Iowa State being better than Georgetown and Maryland with the amount of talent that are around just in the 50 blocks around those campuses. There's a ton of basketball talent, high-level basketball talent. In Iowa, I mean, you got to go, and they're out. They're
Sure,
out there.
yeah.
28.5, program integrity, 51.4, maybe the best backcourt in the country. Tamim Lipsy can really go. Plus 22.9. Kansas, everybody's excited about this. And again, this goes under the moniker, good news is they got a lot back. The bad news is they got the same guys back that they had last year. Hunter Dickinson, can he turn it around? The really first big NIL Big Daddy. Everybody knew he got big money. Everybody scrutinized him, watched him, and says, no, is it worth it? Did they pay good dollars for that? And so under that type of window, national championship, Final Four is really, that's how you pay out. So we'll see if Hunter Dickinson has that. They depart 36.3. They bring back 48.5. Great number for Coach Self. They're going to be really tough. 12.2. The only rub I see with them right now is the 2 injuries that they've just had. They had 2 pretty significant injuries, not to starters, but to guys that were going to be in the mix for sure in the rotation. And so the question is, are your next group of rotational guys going to be able to hold that? We'll see. Kansas State, they depart 65.3. They return 12.6, negative 52.7. Oklahoma State, 61.3. They return 20, negative 41.3. TCU, going to be rough down in there. Texas Christian, 76.6, out the door. Return 4.3, 72.3 negative differential. Central Florida, Johnny Dawkins departs, big number, 40.2, report 35.7. They're negative 45.2, 35.7. They're negative 10 points. Texas Tech, they depart 47.9. They return 43.7. That's why people are excited about Texas Tech. Net, minus 4.2. Utah going to have a tough time in this league, I think. 65.3 on the depart, 26.5 on the return. Net, negative 38.8. West Virginia, another team that just doesn't belong in the Big 12. Their basketball program is never getting off the deck in the Big 12. I know they got a new coach. I know they're all excited. Coach DeVries and everybody going in there. I don't know for the life of me why he took this job. I don't. Had a good job. Was in a good spot. Making really good money. If you hang around, there are other jobs out there. But he jumped all over that West Virginia job. 83.7 out the door. Bring back 2.6. They're 81.1 on the negative side.
Wow.
Okay.
That's crazy.
It is. It really is. Okay. This is a segment of the show that we're going to refer to as the intentional destruction of pictures of the president. And what that means in street vernacular is you're burning cash. You're burning it. You have a big old fire pit outside your house and you're just dumping money into it. Thank you, Pete. There it is. There goes the UMass money. Okay? I know that they've gotten a lot of scrutiny. AD Ryan Bamford, a lot of different pieces moving up there. You know, they have a fairly political structure up there. The move to the MAC isn't playing well. It's not playing well. UMass is 2-228 in their last 30 FBS football games. 2-28. The MAC conference has had 0 at-large bids since 1999 in basketball. Oof. 0 at-large bids. NCAA appearances, really, really not a strong thing. I just don't get, since they've been in, they've had one, UMass has had one NCAA appearance since 1998.
And that was the Calipari era.
No.
No, it was after the
Cal was well before that.
Yep.
But this is 2014. I would say Steve Lapis might have been the coach at that time.
Probably, yeah.
But that was one time in 1998. All of the stuff that goes into that, and I think personally, the move to move out to the MAC is going to absolutely destroy your basketball program, well beyond where it is right now. You have a 9,000-seat arena that doesn't draw well. When you play teams on the Atlantic coast, rivalries, people know. Sometimes you get a good draw, senior day, something like that, they get a good draw, but for the most part, they don't draw well. In a 9,000-seat arena that's practically empty. And so now you're going to go and play Akron. You're going to play a bunch of teams from Ohio, Toledo, and you think anybody's going to come to the game, the basketball games, to see UMass play Toledo? It's the same reason UConn ran out of the conference they were in when they were playing Rice. Nobody wanted to play Rice. Nobody wants to see UConn play Rice.
Yep.
So they ran back to the Big East. I don't get it. But the whole thing is just crazy.
They're not even going to do well in the football team's not even going to do well in the MAC, are they?
Their football team's not doing very good. Period.
That's what I'm saying.
They're 2-28.
Right.
I mean, against really good competition.
Right.
That gives you an idea. Now, you're pulling in some pretty significant guarantee money during that time as well. So it does help pay the bills. Some of these football games are upwards of, we talked about it here, Notre Dame, that Northern Illinois game cost them like 1.2, 1.4 million in guarantee, and they lost. So Northern Illinois is in the same conference as UMass now. And they ran halfway up the flagpole in that conference and beat Notre Dame. So I think UMass's football team is going to have, I don't know if it's going to be the same as UConn going into the Big 12, but I don't think it's going to be pretty.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be pretty. Pete, throw me up my portal potty. Throw me up my portal potty because we got a final portal potty uncommitted list here. Division 1, 22% uncommitted. Division 2, we talked about last week, 61%. Everybody thinks they're going up. It's not just an escalator, folks. You go up, you go down. It's an elevator. It goes up and down both ways. All right? Total 1990 out of 3,055 went someplace. Uncommitted. Unbelievable. The amount of uncommitted is unbelievable. Now, they don't track Division 3. They don't track NAIA.
So are these kids out of school even though they're uncommitted? Or are they still going to their colleges?
The answer to that is yes, no, and maybe.
Yeah, you don't even know. Like all these other kids out of school?
Some are still there, maybe not playing basketball. Some might have been able to stay on the team. Who knows? You don't know. But then there's a whole bunch of them that ain't any place.
Yeah, right.
That, you got to rationalize that too, right? If some of them are stuck around and some of them are over here, some are over there, then you got to realize some of them ain't no place.
Right.
And what happens also, I'll tell you some of the stuff that I've seen from the underside of it, because we see what falls in Division 3. We get to see what falls. You were in Division 1. How did you get down to Division 3? How are you talking to me right now as a coach when you were a Division 1 player? A lot of what we're seeing is there's an impunity around the coaches, and if they made a bad decision, they don't honor it anymore. They're just chasing everybody out the door. And what happens, and I don't know that it happens at the moment that they start chasing these guys out the door, but what I see is, or maybe it's the reason they are chasing them out the door, is that the grades really suffer from that moment on. So a lot of these young men coming out of these Division I schools with their grades are in complete disarray. They wind up going now to junior college trying to fix, but they can't go to Division III schools either. You know, we've looked at a number of young men that come down the turnpike, and we looked and said, wow, you know, love to have you on a basketball stretch of it, but there's no way that we could admit you to school right now.
So that means they were propping them up.
Oh, and also just chasing them out when the academics, as I said, maybe that's the reason they chased him out.
Yeah.
Not going to class, not doing his work. Professors are complaining about him. On the lower levels of Division I, you don't have it like that, you know, where everybody gets to do whatever they want. You don't have to go to class and they still pass you. That happens on the higher levels sometimes, but not all the time. But it's certainly not, but you know how you haven't ever heard of anybody being academically ineligible in like 25 years?
Yeah.
In Division I. You know how you haven't heard and
So
nobody ever has bad grades in the middle. Now you come in as a one and done, let's say. You come in, you sign up for your classes, right? And then right about the time you go and you get all withdrawals, or you just take Fs in those classes. No big deal. You're still eligible. You play second semester, and by March you have an NIL deal, or you're going out and you're going to the NBA or G League or someplace like that. You have no intention of being anywhere near that college in a real way of a student. But the NBA comes down, plays heavy, and then they want these kids to go to school for a year. What's the sense? Can anybody explain to me? I would open it up, a forum, anywhere. Come online with us and tell me, what is the rationale for having somebody go to college for 1 year?
There isn't really.
What does that produce?
It's just more money for the NCAA.
Right, but it
Period.
also, but what it really does is it covers the NBA's liabilities. Because as we told you at our draft, we think they pick the wrong guys all the time. And they do. But now they don't want to pick the wrong guys that are too young. Because for some reason, if you drafted Lenny Cook, all right, that wouldn't turn out too good. And there's a guy, that's a name from the past, one of the great superstars, phenoms when he was younger out of New York City that never played in the NBA in a day in his life.
How much maturity do you think the NBA, these kids coming out of college after 1 year are going to have going into the NBA? They're still going to have those same immaturity problems that they have after a year or just coming out of high school.
No question, except some of them are also like 22 and 23 years old at that moment too. The prep school route.
Yeah,
you go to 4 years of high school, and then you go lay out in prep school for a year, and then you go, and some of these guys, might have taken a year back when they got left back when they were in grammar school. Some of these guys are much, much older than the other class too, and that disparity is no good either.
Yep.
There is so much to be tightened up, but they don't have to forfeit the money in order to tighten this stuff up. They don't have to forfeit all the money that's coming in through the television contracts in order to make this thing run right. What they're doing right now is just taking the money and running. And it's after 75 shows, I guess the best explanation for why I wanted to start this show with Pete was because every single time that you turn on your television right now, whether it's in a political forum or whether you're just looking to watch a game and have some sports commentary associated with it, every single time you turn on your television, you're being lied to. You're being lied to in dramatic fashion. I could go through the number of lies that we've all heard throughout the years that if we went back through them now, we'd shake our head and say, oh my God. And what I say to people also is lies have BMI. Lies have body mass index. Some lies are heavier than others.
Yeah.
When your wife turns to you and says, honey, does my butt look big in these jeans? And you go, no, baby, you look fabulous. And the reality of the situation, if it was a completely honest answer, might have been, but no man in America is going to survive saying that to his wife, right? But that's a skinny little lie that we tell in order to make it through the day. There's other lies that have much greater weight and consequence, and those are the lies that are coming across your TV right now. That's why we started In the Zone, folks. We're never going to lie to you. We're going to bring it to you as straight as we possibly can. And when we get into a situation where we make mistakes, say we don't know, or something like that, we'll go back and do a La Placa, clean it up, get the cleanup crew in here, get the mops out, and we'll go back and give you the straight story and be honest with you. Our mistakes are not intentional mistakes. They're lying to you on purpose. Think about that. We'll see you next week on The Zone.